This is the Helpful Lockpicker here, and welcome back to my lockpicking homeschool series. The video I have for you today is going over spool pens. What you can see in front of us here is an example of a spool pen. They get their name from their spool-like appearance. You can see that they have a thinner inside diameter and a larger outside diameter. These pens do a really great job at thwarting low-skilled attacks such as raking, rocking, zipping, and lock bumping. They are very cheap for manufacturers to produce and are very highly utilized in many lock settings. These pens are a lot of fun to learn, and I'd like to go over with you some of the ways that they present themselves and how we can pick them to get the locks open. I'm going to get this spool pen loaded up into a lock, and I'm going to go over some of its features in a moment. I have 3 pens loaded up in the plug here. The first one is a standard pen followed by 2 spools. This is what this plug looks like in its resting state. You can see how all the driver pins are sitting. What spools do is they take advantage of the fact that you have to put rotational force on the plug in either the clockwise or the counterclockwise direction in order to set the pins. And once you've set all the standard pins in the lock, you'll have nothing but the spools left, and then the plug will start to turn and cause a false set, but it will not open. Why that occurs is because the inner diameter of each spool is much smaller than the outer diameter, and they get hung up on the middle there, so it gives that core some area to turn, but it will not open. In order to set these, you're going to need to probe each key pen for the one that's providing counter rotation. So as I am tensioning clockwise here, as I start to lift up on the binding spool, it will start to lift up past that smaller middle area, and it will get to the thicker, larger diameter, and it will start to straighten out the lock. You got to lift up against that counter rotation and set the spool to shear, and once they are all set, the plug will turn over and the lock will open. So there's a pretty basic formula you need to follow to set spool pens. What you need to do is apply light tension and probe each pen, searching for the binding pin. More often than not, you're going to need to set all the non-spool pins first, meaning a standard pen, maybe a serrated pen. And once all those non-spool pins are set, which I will represent by removing it out of the plug here, you will present with a false set. So you're going to get some rotation on the plug, but it will not open. When you're in this false set, you're going to be stuck on the smaller inner diameter of the spool here, which will be allowing the plug rotation, but it will not allow the plug to open. In order to get it open, you're going to need to probe each key pin with your pick, and as you lift on the key pin, you want to find the one that's giving you counter rotation, where the plug will be lifting back as you lift on it. What's happening is, as you are lifting on that key pin, the spool is starting to straighten out, and it's going from that thinner inner diameter to that thicker outer diameter, and it's straightening out the plug. And once you set that above shear, you will either get the lock open or you'll be stuck on another spool pin, and you'll need to repeat until the lock opens. Now, that sounds easier said than done in a lot of cases. Many of the times, this is not as simple as it presents. Many times you can get into a situation where as quickly as you're setting a pen, you're dropping a pen. The true binding order becomes an important concept as you're learning to pick locks with spool pens. What can often happen is you're going to be picking a pen and you'll feel it bind, you'll feel it set, and you'll know it's to shear, and you'll start working on the next pen. But moments later it will drop back down. This can be very infuriating for someone starting out because you end up getting in an endless cycle of setting and dropping and having to restart, and you do not know why. This is because that pen was not ready to be set yet, and you should have set another pen beforehand. This is why you always want to try to pay attention to the binding order as best you can, and that can really help you move forward. When you end up getting in that infinite loop of setting a pen and dropping it, perhaps it's not the correct pen to be set, and what you should do is probe each pen and find the one that is binding the hardest and giving the most counter rotation, and likely that will be the pen that you need to set. And once that is set, notate where that is in your binding order and keep picking through the lock until you get it open. Spool pens can be frustrating at times because you will often end up dropping pens in order to set the spool pens, and you'll need to keep cycling through them. But if you just pay attention to the feedback the lock is giving to you, you'll end up finding, more often than not, the locks talk and they really tell you what they need done. But learning spool pens can be a lot of fun. They offer tremendous feedback, and you'll really find it fun getting to a good false set and really getting to hone the feeling of counter rotation. Spool pens are a security pen that were designed to make locks harder to open, and it's a great feeling knowing once you've mastered them that you can get through them really faster. This is where it gets to the point where single pin picking becomes very valuable, and it becomes often faster than trying to do the low skilled attacks. Often the low skilled attacks such as raking, rocking, zipping, and bumping will fail at this level. Many of the security pens that are put in place do a great job at stopping them. It does not mean it's impossible to do, but it does make the resistance much stronger. But the more you practice, the better you'll get. Spool pens are really cool to learn, and just keep practicing them, and you'll end up becoming really good at them and enjoy them a whole lot. So I have our lock up in the vise here, and what I have done is I have placed a line here and here so you can see the neutral position of the plug when we are starting out. I have a standard pin in position 1, a spool in position 2, and a spool in position 3. So once you have all the non-spool pins set, which would be the standard pin in position 1, you'll see the lock go into a false set. So what I'm going to do is do some light clockwise tension, and I would like you to just watch how the lines start to separate after I set pin 1. So I'm going to set pin 1 now, got a good click, and now you can see the gap is starting to form. But let me lock it back up and I'll just show you again. I'm going to set pin 1, and we got some movement. Now I'm going to probe the next two pins. I'm going to look for one that's providing me counter rotation, which pin 2 is. As I set the one providing counter rotation, the spool starts to straighten out as I lift it, but I still want to provide tension against it, but I do need to allow it to counter rotate back. So now 1 and 2 feel okay. Now position 3, I'm getting counter rotation, and I have got the lock open. So that is how you pick spool pins. And what I'd like to do next is show you a view like this as I am picking them so you can see them in action as well. Alright, so now you can see how the pins are presenting as we're picking them. I still have a standard pin in position 1, and a spool in position 2, and a spool in position 3. This is how all the pins look like in their resting state, and I'm going to now pick pin 1, and I'll show you what it looks like when it's in its set state, and you'll see the false set occur once we get it set. Alright, so we have that pin 1 set, and now I have some rotation on the core. But one thing I want to show you is pin 1's the one that's binding. I cannot get pin 3 or 2 to set. They're all just very springy and not ready to bind. So once I get pin 1 bound and set, we'll see the rotation on the plug. Now I'm going to probe for the next key pin that's providing me some counter rotation, which pin 2 is. You can see on my tension wrench I'm getting some counter rotation as I lift up 2, and that's now set. And now I got a deeper false set since pin 1 and pin 2 are set. Now I got to get down to the final spool, which is going to be in position 3. I'm getting some counter rotation. I got that set, and the lock is now opened. So that is how the pins present while you're picking them in action. Spool pins are a lot of fun to work on, and they take a little bit of practice, but once you learn how to open them, they can become quite easy. They provide a lot of feedback, and that feedback becomes very valuable once you learn to understand it, because you can really know what's going on in your lock very quickly, and it can be a great tool to get your locks open. If you guys have any questions or suggestions, please leave them in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video and you'd like to see more like it, please subscribe. As always, thank you so much for checking out this video, and I hope you all have a great day. Thank you so much. Bye.